Welcome to Pivot Talks with PC. My name is Pauline Caballero, and we're talking change. It isn't coming, it's here. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining. I am very excited to finally be talking with my good friend Kelly Boudreaux, who we've been sort of scheduling this on again, off again podcast. But she is a fascinating lady, and I can totally relate to who she is and how she shows up in the world. She is a mom of 3 beautiful boys, a wife, a yoga studio owner, a brand creator, and the behind the scenes mastermind of a food business. So Kelly, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Pauline. I'm honored to be on here today and just spend more time with you. Anytime I can get with Pauline is just precious. So
ditto. The feeling is so mutual. Kelly, you and I met, it would have been, Noah is how old? 15. So it would have been like 10 years ago, almost.
10 years ago.
Working for a non-for-profit. And, I knew back then the special sauce that you had in entrepreneurship and also just in being a really amazing human being. But, I thought this morning here for me anyways in the GTA, I thought we could talk a little bit and dive deep about, who you are and what sort of drives your entrepreneurial spirit. So maybe you can, I gave the listeners a background of you, but maybe you want to give your own background. Tell us.
Yes, sure. So I was born and raised in Morgan City, Louisiana, and I can, from the start of this conversation, what drove my entrepreneurial spirit is just seeing my parents and my grandparents raise a business, a very thriving business in this small town, and see how hard they worked and the amount of work that they put in, and then how they were for the people that worked for them too. It became a family. So my grandparents started G&J Land and Marine in 1964. I think that's correct, 56 years ago. And they moved down here from Seattle. My grandpa had got recruited to work in the oil industry. And then they ended up opening up a food and distribution business. They were in the grocery business in Seattle. So it was already like something that they had hand in hand. And it started small. And then my dad joined on and it grew. And I watched my dad and my grandparents work together and just grow this business to over 100 employees. Wow. And sustain in this town. And what it is a food and distribution business that delivers to the oil rigs. So it's a very niche business, very, very specific of what they were doing. And they deliver from the trucks. So they drive the trucks to the docks and they stop at the docks, and then boats or helicopters go out to the rigs. But we would deliver from Brownsville, Texas to Panama City. So all along the Gulf Coast, but hubbed in Morgan City. Mm. So really seeing them, how hard they worked and the passion they had for it, and also that it was a part of our family, is what kicked off my entrepreneurial spirit. And then I went into my own search of what I wanted to do, many, many years of it. As I got older, I worked for a PR firm for a while downtown. I sold in downtown Denver. I lived there for a little bit. I sold real estate in Denver and did really well, but it was still something, something was missing. My husband and I were living in Denver, and that's about the time we decided, you know what, I think we want to move back home and get involved with the family business. And
interesting.
So, yeah, we thought we were never coming home. I was like, no way are we going back to Louisiana. No way are we ever going back to Morgan City. My brother was the same way. He lived in Austin. He's like, nope, we're never taking over G&J. We also, that was the flip side. We saw how hard my dad worked, and we're like, nope, we're not doing it. Nope. And then, my brother kind of kicked it off. Him and his wife, he's 4.5 years older than me. him and his wife decided to move home while Cleve and I were living in Denver. And I think it was like, oh, wait, my brother wants to do that. Oh, okay. Maybe there is something there, like, because I trusted my brother so much, and just seeing like his mind switch too. And then also seeing him wanting to go home and raise his kids. And I knew I wanted to be close to them. And my husband was ready to get close to his family. We're like, you know what? Maybe it's time to follow suit. So we decided to move home. And really, my husband is in the day-to-day operations of the business with my brother now. My dad has retired, which he definitely should. And I am definitely behind the scenes in the business. So.
Oh, I love that. It's so funny, we travel the world to find ourselves, and then we end up finding that everywhere we go, there we are. We just show up.
Oh, I mean, literally, Cleve and I traveled the world. Before we moved home, we moved to a small little town in Colorado. I worked at a paint store and waited tables. It was like right before I turned 30. And during that time, we traveled the world for 2 months. We had our tent and backpacked and went from Fiji, New Zealand, Australia, all the way to Europe.
Oh, I love it.
Still, we're like, yep, we're still moving back to Morgan City, Louisiana, is as south as you can go if you look at the map. We're actually below sea level here.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, and what's so interesting is that your dad sort of allowed both you and your brother to sort of find your own ways, which speaks a lot to his integrity and his character.
Yeah, he never like pushed us to say, oh, y'all got to come home and take over. It was always like, if you don't, I'm either selling or I'm going to find someone else. And that's how he left it. And he's like, go do your things, go travel. He loved to travel. He was from Seattle. So he never forced it on us, which I think was a good piece. Neither my mom. I'd say my mom was probably like, y'all don't have to come back. It's okay. And she wanted to see something different because she saw how stressful G&J is, right? She saw that flip side of things. But of course she wants us close. And now that we all have kids, it's great to have. So
it makes a perfect union, like just a reunion in the union.
Yes.
But so now G&J had to pivot given some of the things that have been going on in the world. We're sort of still in the middle of COVID-19. But given that you were servicing the oil rigs, was there a pivot that needed to happen, or a change or a shift that needed to happen even before COVID-19 hit?
Oh, yeah. So about 2014, the oil industry started to see some changes. It started to decline. We had, there's supply and demand issues with the oil industry. So there was more supply and less demand of it. So the price of oil started to get a lot less. And so they weren't pulling the oil out as much. So they didn't need as much food on the rigs because some of them were shutting down or they were going to land. Things were just shifting. The shift was already happening. So Cleve, my husband, is really great at some of the diversification as far as looking at school systems. He got really involved at looking at the school systems and delivering to the schools. So we started to look into those route of things. We also dabbled with, my brother always wanted like a local side of things in the industry. And so we started to have just specialty lists go out to local members and see if we had any takers to have some kind of like just local grocery store. And then really any kind of diversification possibilities or bids we can go up against, we would go for them.
I love that. And so what type of mindset did you and your family have to have during that time, like in the 2014 era?
I mean, at first it was definitely there was some fear around it, but then once we sat, we talked about many different options of what do we do? Do we possibly try to sell a business? Is there talks of a finality to the business? Because the oil industry seems to be like taken its goodbyes.
Mm.
But we are so invested into the family business and our people that those questions quickly went off the table. That I think is more the mindset of commitment and persistence.
Mm. Yeah, I really get that of you, like just knowing you and who you are. So I can imagine it's like 10 times if we start to meet all of your family members around, is that level of commitment and perseverance.
Oh yeah.
And so I mean, how do you get everyone enrolled in leveling up to that? Like what are some tools that you had to use or pull out?
For the team or for for my brother and my husband mainly?
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
for your close-knit team.
Yeah, for the close-knit team, it was a lot of, I did a lot of listening, and that's kind of what I do on my position of being a stakeholder in the company and not in the everyday. And then just giving them a different perspective of what I see and,
Mm.
and allowing them, especially both my husband, family businesses can be tough for sure. And especially when it's your husband and your brother in it together. And it's being able to see both personalities and have compassion for each and listen to them and then share a different piece of the story.
Mm.
Or just see if sometimes it's just really listening to them, honestly.
Right. Just letting them be heard.
Yeah, yes, because usually they're the ones that are, in the face of the business, they're the ones that are doing a lot of the talking or figuring out. So much pressure on their shoulders is to the support role of lifting them up when they need to.
Mm. I love that because, so often we get caught up in what's the strategy and what's the doing.
Hmm.
And to me, it really sounds like your commitment is really to be a committed listener and to hold space for your team members, your husband, your brother, to sort of discover what it is that they want to see have happen. And, creating that pathway where collectively you guys can walk down the path together as a team, which it's beautiful because you don't often see people taking that time to listen. We get so caught up in doing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the beauty of me not being in the day to day, right? So I'm not in the day to day operations of what they're doing. If I was, it'd be a different story.
Mhm.
And I thought about that for a while, like to be more involved in the day to day operations. But both my brother and my husband, we had a big talk and discussion of what that would look like. And we all decided it'd be best if not. And which I'm thankful because it gave me the opportunity to work in the yoga industry as well and have free to be at the same time and still be involved.
Right. Yeah. And it sounds like they have a little secret weapon. And they
That's the thing. I'm in their corner and they both know that, right? It's a lot, like, it's a lot of logistics, all kind of moving parts, very high stress, dealing with so many different personalities that they're taking on, that they need someone in their corner that they can just kind of pull back for a minute and not react and totally get into, okay, we're going to do this and this and put the strategy forward, but like, okay, let's really look back and take a second before we get moving on the strategy.
I love that. And you and I have something very familiar or similar. We both sort of deal in logistics kind of as a another part of our being, which the other part generally includes yoga and wellness.
Mm-hmm.
But logistics, I find for myself that it's very male dominated.
Oh, very male dominated,
Yeah,
which is so interesting because it takes a lot of multitasking, right?
right.
And
It,
I gotta say, my dad was like the master of it's him running that desk, like the desk at G&J. So there's different forms of paper where you have to circle from different departments, how many boxes are coming out, and it's moving parts and pieces out. And it is constant. And he was just a master. And I see that in my brother and in my husband too. And but it's funny because usually the women are very well known for the multitasking, right?
right? Yeah, exactly. Because we're juggling the kids and the career
Yeah.
and the house and the cleaning and the and the always so much. But
Yeah.
how is it that you feel heard in the male dominated industry, especially when you're dealing with your brother and your husband? Like what's the tool or the trick that you have that allows you to be heard?
They I just feel like we have utmost respect. There's so much respect. Like both my brother and Cleve come to me with everything or ideas and confidential information, and I have to say the word respect comes to it. There has to be a level of equal, like they don't see me as other or below them. It's equal playing ground that I'm a part of this, even though I'm not in the day to day.
I love that. I mean, I love the concept of people, like, really creating the decision to double down on the business because of people. And then I also love the idea of like commitment, just really staying true and strong to your commitment. And then just that level of respect
Mm-hmm.
and having that. And do you think that that's really sort of the key ingredients in the success that G&J has experienced, even here in COVID-19? And maybe you can speak a little bit about how you guys pivoted there.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think respect is a key ingredient. Lack of, if we go into yoga terms, lack of ego. Like my brother and Cleve, and I have to say myself, there's a lack of ego in there that
Mm,
is that leads to the respect for each other.
right.
But so for COVID, COVID for G&J is a wild ride. So, March 23rd, they had the executive order in Louisiana or Morgan City, just what the lockdown would look like. And we started getting phone calls from local people, more for janitorial items, because everything was running off the shelves, right? So people started to realize, oh, well, there's no more toilet paper or hand sanitizer, and all those that started to happen. And during that time, one of our biggest clients in the oil industry, he called my brother and was like, hey, I don't know what's going on at G&J, but your phone lines are tied up. And my brother went up to customer service and saw like everybody on the phones because the local people were needing of products. So that's where it started to come in. Earlier I spoke to, we dabbled with over the years, this kind of specialty list. It was mainly food for the local community.
Right.
That, okay, maybe this is something we need to pivot to a little bit more, is focus on some local products, specifically the janitorials. So that's what we started with.
Okay, so
And
you started with the cleaning supplies.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, because our distribution service is food and janitorials. So like we have a huge warehouse just full of all the cleaning supplies for the rigs.
Okay. Interesting. Well, what a perfect opportunity right there.
Yeah. So it started with that. And we started old school. We had like an Excel spreadsheet that we put together, and then it started to come in about food. We're like, okay, maybe we just start the like local, just curbside pickup for food. So we started to put together Excel spreadsheet. We had 4,000. It was my sister-in-law, my brother, and Cleve and I one day during COVID. We got together, socially distanced, and went through a list of 4,000 items and pulled it down to about 1,600 that we could put on this spreadsheet.
Wow.
And in the midst of it, Eric's starting to have conversations about a website, like an e-commerce site. So that happened, and we sent out the first email. I do the emails now for Kerbside. That's PR is my background, so writing. And I sent out the first email, and there was people like, I can't open up the thing on my phone, and because there's a macro document. So it's just like a whole learning process, which now you look back at, it's like, okay, probably should start with the app or the website, but we started the steps towards it. And so this whole thing, GJ Curbside is what it's called. So we have G&J Food, Land and Marine, and then we have GJ Curbside. And so it started with the community. And then it was, I want to say April 20th, the oil prices like plummeted. They went to below, like a negative.
Yep, I remember.
So I think it got down to what, -40. And, you know, this is all the supply and demand. There's not lots of people traveling and all that stuff. And so within 7 days, we lost $500,000 worth of revenue.
Wow.
And so it started with the community building, like we're doing this for community. And then it became, we're also doing this because we want to keep our people in.
Amazing.
We don't want to let go of our people. We have 70 employees right now.
Amazing. And through that transition and that pivot and like doing curbside, G&J Curbside, were you able
GJ Curbside. Mm-hmm.
Were you able to keep all of those employees employed?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an amazing accomplishment.
I think we had to do one layoff of like 3 or 4 people, and then we ended up hiring 1 or 2 back. So
congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
And aligned with your core values, right? Like just going back to when you guys were talking, do we want to do this or do we not want to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Just doubling down on people.
Yeah.
And so now how is the curbside business going now that we're sort of have a lot more of the fear of COVID-19 behind us?
Yeah.
You know, stock and oil prices have sort of level set.
It's going really well. You know, everyone went to curbside and delivery. So we also do delivery now. In August, we were able to get our liquor license where we can deliver as well and do pickup. And that's actually 50% of the revenue, which is interesting. Is it the save all to G&J? No, not at this point. We have some goals in mind that we're starting to develop that could push the envelope on this. But the same, it's providing for the community and it's keeping jobs. So that's what we're really focused on with GJ Curbside.
And I mean, it's really interesting to hear someone with, stakeholding in a large organization talk about that third bottom line, and that third bottom line really being about people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite inspiring. I mean, Kelly, many of the people that are listening to these podcasts are also experiencing massive change and fear, like actually quite afraid of fear. And I think I shared this with you. I'll never forget when I was publishing my book, someone said, "Oh, don't use the tagline change. People don't like change." But we don't have a choice anymore. So do you have anything that you can share or any words of wisdom that really have supported you throughout the last 12 months? Because we really focused on your family business, G&J, but I know personally that you also had massive shifts happening with your yoga studio franchises. I mean, and not even franchises, they're actual studios that you own. You have multiple locations. But what is it, and how, like, what could you share with our listeners on ways to persevere and navigate through change?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say perseverance is definitely the biggest word. Like, keep pushing forward and keep throwing things in the fire. What's the quote? My brother says it all the time. Like, you keep throwing things in the fire, and something's going to come out, right? Something's going to spark. And that's the thing, especially with G&J. We're focused on GJ Curbside. We have plans for it. We're also starting to look to diversify, like anybody from Brownsville, Texas to Panama City that needs food distribution, and we can deliver with truck because we have trucks. Like, we will go there. So that's what we're looking at. It doesn't just have to be the oil industry, because change is here with the oil industry. Right. And we've seen that not just in the last few months. This has been since 2014. Mm-hmm. So it's continuously just not giving up, not setting your eyes on just one thing's going to be the save all grace, because we don't know that right now. And even for free to be, it's like we with y'all, we did Instagram, and then we went to Zoom, and now we're back in the studios and we have on demand. And now we're really only focusing on in studio because our studios are open, and on demand because that's where we're seeing what our community wants.
Right.
And I think that's a big thing, Pauline, is like, listen to your people. Listen to your clients. And hear them, and don't like hold on to your idea is going to be the best idea. Like, listen around and get inspired from what people are talking about and doing. Because if we get past the fear of the change, and I don't want to discredit that because it is scary times. But I really do think there's so many possibilities, and if the mind can just be opened a bit more and not stuck in the old ways of things.
I love that. Listen to your people.
Yeah. They'll tell you what to do.
Right. We just have to be willing to hear it.
We just have to be willing to hear it. Sometimes we don't want to hear it, but yeah, they'll speak up.
I love that. Well, thank you. It's just so amazing to get to talk to you in this capacity, and also just to learn more about G&J. And I'm very inspired and in awe of what you're able to do and create. And Kelly, you do it in such a beautiful way where many people don't even know all the multiple hats that you wear.
I don't even know all the multiple hats that I wear, to be completely honest. I'm like, wait, which way do I go today? So,
well, if you're listening to this podcast, you can see Kelly and her team at Free to Be Power Yoga. They have, as she stated, they have on-demand classes, so you can access them anywhere in the world. And watch for G&J and all of the amazing stuff they'll be doing, not only for business to business transactions, but also business to consumers. And Kelly, thank you. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for joining us here. And thank you for who you are for the world.
Oh, thanks, Pauline. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for having me.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.